Welcome back to part 2. We got our pump for our 94 Subi. Now, I do want to give a special thanks to Rob down at our local Riley's. He had to go through quite the debacle to get this pump to us. Unfortunately, the first one wasn't milled correctly and it did leak, and we ended up having to reshoot the segment we're shooting tonight. So those things happen. You know, you can't win them all, and every once in a while you're going to get a bum part, and that's just kind of the way it goes with aftermarket parts. Anyway, to get started, we got a kit. We're going to go through. I'm going to show you what you're going to need to do to get the reservoir and the pump married. There's a lot of O-rings in this kit that you are not going to need. Unfortunately, this is a universal kit for most of the Subarus for about 20 years. They all use this pump. Difference is after 95 they started using a reservoir instead of the sandwich type. So let me get the scene set. Let me show you what we're going to do next. Move on and get this thing done. So on your kit from O'Reilly's, you're going to find there's 5 O-rings, or say 3 O-rings and 2 coppers in here. I'm going to show you the ones you need for 90 to 94 only. If you have 95 on up, the arrangement and the O-rings are different because these are put into the reservoir and these are still used the same way. The instructions are pretty basic. You know, it's going to tell you basically flush your lines, replace your O-rings, and use good fluid. Okay, there's a big one you won't use, and these 2 copper crushes you will not use for the sandwich design. What you will use, the 2 that you will need, you'll need the one for the reservoir, and this little one is for the high pressure hose. We'll replace that here in a minute. Now let's replace the O-ring on the reservoir. They come off pretty easy. Size them up to the one in the bag, and that's how you know which one needs to go back here, but we'll get rid of this one. We don't reinstall the wrong one. Then I like to put a little bit of Vaseline on my O-rings where applicable, and Vaseline you can use about 90% of the time. However, that can vary by application. Nothing to it. It is going to be a little slippery, so alright, let's basically push it down. It's okay if a little Vaseline gets in the power steering fluid, because on this model it uses Dextron 3. No problem there. Alright, next you're going to want to put this thing in a vise to marry the 2. So we're going to go over to the vise now. Now if you want to keep the paint nice, like I want to keep the paint nice, go ahead and use some shop towels there, and don't over tighten this, but you want it tight enough so you can get your job done. Okay. If you over tighten it this way, you can do pump damage, so you just want just enough. Grab your 2 bolts. Make sure you have a little Vaseline there, no problem there. Put them both in at the same time, run equal torque, it's about 18 to 22 foot-pounds. You could get a torque wrench on this, but no need to. Once it stops, about a quarter past turn, call it good. The pump and reservoir is complete, ready to be installed. There's one other O-ring in the kit. It's for the high pressure hose. You may or may not need to replace that. This one has new hoses put on, so we're going to keep the green O-ring in there. I learned a long time ago to use the O-ring that came with the hose as opposed to the one in the box, but sometimes you might find you might have to use this one instead. But there is a replacement for this, no matter if you do the canister or the sandwich style. Yeah, I kind of made a mess with power steering fluid. It looks worse than it actually was. Luckily I had towels and I was ready to go with that, but you know, one thing about it, if you're going to do this job, plan ahead. Try to get as much towel in there as you can before you take the pump out. Other than that, we've cleaned everything up. Everything looks good. About ready to go back in with it. There we go. As I'm installing the pump, I will leave this little cap here. I'll leave that installed because I don't want dirt getting in here. And the same thing with the top cap. We'll have that installed while we're putting our bolts in and messing with it. Dirt is the enemy of power steering pumps. Alright, get the bolts. You want to get all these bolts in first without tightening them. You want to leave them loose till they're all in. That fresh paint can be a little tough to get through. Now these bolts are 18 to 22 foot-pounds. I'm not going to get a torque wrench on it. Just use a small wrench. Alright folks, that's how you get your pump back in. Next we'll do the pulley. Line it up, push it back, snap lock washer. Alright, we're going to get a pre-torque on this. It is a pretty substantial torque that I was reading. It's like 42 to 62 foot-pounds. One thing with Subarus, they got broad torque ranges for their bolts. It's kind of odd to me. So we're going to get the torque wrench. We're going to put about 55 foot-pounds on this. Maybe 52, being right in the middle of the ballpark. But we'll get it seated. You gotta be careful when you're torquing this final nut. If you just put a wrench in and push against the radiator, you'll probably go through it. So what I do, I grab a piece of wood and I share the load in front of the whole core support, good to go. Alright, we're gonna go to 47 foot-pounds and call that good. And last order of business, now we can get the belt on and get the front part of this job done. And we can move on to the most important part in my opinion, fluid flush, first start, test drive and done. Alright, we're going to set the tension on the belt. It's a real easy procedure, but it's one that if you over tighten the belt, you can burn up this bearing or this bearing. And if you're too loose, it's going to squeal. If you're too tight, you can snap the belt and basically ruin the work you just did. So I say don't do either. Let's really focus on how much tension we have here. We know we need enough, but we know we also don't need a lot either. It's actually better for it to be too loose than over tight, so. Okay, so we're going to leave it a little loose, and that's fine. We have to tighten it up. It's always better to have to either add a little, but you can't take away once you've broken a belt or a bearing. So, there we go. Once you got the tension on the belt where you like it, you want to cinch down this bolt right here. Run about, again, 25-30 foot-pounds here. Okay, at this point we're going to stop. Part 3, we're going to go through the fluid and flush, the part that will make or break this project. I mean, you can do all this fine, but if you don't address the fluid problem that you probably had in the first place, you'll be doing this in less than 6 months. So let's not do that. But yeah, go ahead and watch part 3. We'll see you there. Thanks for watching.